Before Nigeria became Nigeria, it was not one country, it was not one government, it was not one people under one flag. It was a vast land of kingdoms, empires, city-states, trading communities, river settlements, Islamic emirates, forest kingdoms, coastal ports, and British-controlled territories. There was no single Nigeria. There was Lagos, there was the Northern Protectorate, there was the Southern Protectorate. There were ancient powers like Benin, Oyo, Sokoto, Kanem Borno, Nupe, Jukun, Igbo communities, Ijaw trading states, Efik merchants, and many more. Then, on January 1st, 1914, the British joined the Northern and Southern Protectorates together to form the Colony and Protectorate of Nigeria under one Governor-General in Lagos. But what exactly existed before that day? This is the story of Nigeria before the amalgamation of 1914. To understand the Nigeria we know today, we must first go back to a time when the word Nigeria was still new, and the land was not yet joined into one colonial territory. The name Nigeria itself came from the river Niger, but long before British officers drew lines on maps, people had been living, trading, building, fighting, farming, worshipping, and governing themselves across this region for centuries. The land was already full of history. The mistake is to think Nigeria started in 1914. It did not. What happened in 1914 was not the birth of the people. It was the joining of territories already occupied, influenced, conquered, negotiated with, and reorganized by the British colonial government. So, before the amalgamation, what was this land? To answer that, we need to look at three layers. First, the indigenous societies that existed before British control. Second, the trade routes and foreign contacts that changed the region. And third, the colonial blocs that Britain eventually joined together. Before colonial rule, the area that would later become Nigeria was one of the most diverse regions in Africa. In the north, there were powerful Islamic states, emirates, trading cities, and old empires connected to the Sahara and the wider Muslim world. In the southwest, Yoruba kingdoms and city-states shaped political, cultural, and religious life. In the southeast, many Igbo communities operated through village assemblies, age grades, titled societies, and decentralized systems of authority. In the south-south, riverine communities built powerful trading networks along the Niger Delta and the Atlantic coast. In the Middle Belt, different kingdoms and communities controlled important trade routes between the north and south. So when we ask, what was Nigeria before 1914? The first answer is simple. It was not empty land waiting to be created. It was a collection of old societies with their own systems, histories, languages, economies, and identities. In the north, political life was shaped by powerful states and emirates. One of the most important was the Sokoto Caliphate, established in the early 19th century after the jihad led by Usman Dan Fodio. It became one of the largest political formations in West Africa, with emirates spread across large parts of what is now northern Nigeria. Cities such as Kano, Katsina, Zaria, Sokoto, and others became centers of trade, Islamic learning, textile production, administration, and taxation. But the north was not only Sokoto. There was also the old Borno tradition in the northeast, connected to the earlier Kanem Borno Empire. Borno had a long history of Islamic scholarship, trans-Saharan trade, and political organization. The north was connected to North Africa through trade routes that carried salt, cloth, leather, horses, books, and ideas. So before 1914, the north was not simply northern Nigeria. That name came from British administration. Before then, it was a complex region of emirates, kingdoms, towns, farming communities, pastoral groups, and trade networks. In the southwest, the Yoruba world had its own deep history. Ile-Ife was regarded as a spiritual and cultural center. Oyo grew into a major empire with military power, trade influence, and a political system involving the Alafin, chiefs, and institutions that balanced authority. But by the 19th century, the Yoruba region had also experienced wars, political changes, and shifting alliances. Cities such as Ibadan, Abeokuta, Ijebu, Ogbomoso, Lagos, and others became important centers in their own right. Lagos had a special story. Because of its position on the coast, Lagos became a major trading port. It attracted merchants, missionaries, returnees from Brazil and Sierra Leone, European traders, and British officials. In 1861, Britain annexed Lagos. It later became a British colony, separate from many of the surrounding territories. So before 1914, Lagos was not just another city. It was a colonial possession and a major commercial gateway. This matters because Lagos would later become the capital of the new colonial Nigeria after amalgamation. To the south and southeast, trade shaped power. The Benin Kingdom had existed for centuries, famous for its royal court, military organization, artistry, and diplomatic relations. Along the Niger Delta and coastal region, communities such as Boni, Opobo, Brass, Calabar, Itsekiri, Ijo, Efik, and others became powerful through trade. First, the Atlantic slave trade transformed the coast in devastating ways. Later, palm oil became one of the major commodities of the 19th century. European interest in the region was not accidental. It was economic. They wanted access to trade. They wanted control of rivers. They wanted influence over ports. They wanted treaties that would give them power over commerce and territory. By the late 19th century, British influence around the Niger Delta had grown through consuls, merchants, gunboats, and treaties. In 1884, Britain established the Oil Rivers Protectorate, which later became the Niger Coast Protectorate in 1893. This was one of the building blocks of what later became southern Nigeria. The southeast was different from the large centralized states of the north and some parts of the southwest. Many Igbo communities were decentralized. Authority often rested in village assemblies, councils of elders, age grades, title holders, women's groups, religious institutions, and trade associations. This does not mean there was no government. It means government worked differently. Instead of one king ruling over a large territory, many communities made decisions through layered systems of consultation, negotiation, ritual authority, and social responsibility. There were also important centers of trade, religion, and influence, including Arochukwu and the Aro network, which played a major role in commerce and regional connections. So, before British rule, the Southeast had political systems that did not always fit neatly into European ideas of kingship. This later created problems when the British tried to impose indirect rule in areas where centralized kingship was not the dominant system. Between the northern savanna and the southern forest were the many societies of the Middle Belt. This region was never just a buffer zone. It had its own states, peoples, languages, and histories. There were Nupe, Jukun, Tiv, Idoma, Igala, Berom, Ebira, Gwari, and many other communities. Some were centralized, others were more decentralized. The Middle Belt also served as a zone of contact between North and South. Goods, ideas, religion, languages, and people moved through it. So, before amalgamation, the future Nigeria was already connected, but not united under one government. connection is not the same thing as political unity. Trade connected people, rivers connected people, markets connected people, religion connected some people, conflict also connected people. But the single political unit called Nigeria was still a colonial project waiting to happen. One of the most important forces behind the making of Nigeria was the river Niger. The Niger and Benue rivers gave access into the interior. Whoever controlled the river trade had enormous economic advantage. In the late 19th century, British commercial interests became more organized. The Royal Niger Company, associated with George Goldie, played a major role in expanding British influence along the Niger and Benue. The company signed treaties, controlled trade, and acted almost like a government in some areas. But a company could not permanently rule such a large region on behalf of Britain. By 1900, the British government took over the Royal Niger Company's territories. Those areas became part of the new colonial structure that produced northern and southern Nigeria. Google Arts and Culture's account of the birth of the Nigerian colony also notes that before the name Nigeria emerged, Lagos, the southern coast, and the Royal Niger Company territories were controlled in separate ways. This is where the story begins to move from indigenous states and trade networks into formal colonial administration. To understand why Britain became more aggressive in this region, we must look beyond West Africa. In the late 19th century, European powers were competing for African territory. Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, Belgium, and others were all trying to secure land, trade, and political influence. This period is often called the Scramble for Africa. After the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, European powers pushed harder to turn influence into formal control. For Britain, the territory around the Niger was too important to lose, especially with French expansion pressing from the west and north. So gradually, commercial influence became political control. Political control became protectorates, and protectorates later became Nigeria. By the early 1900s, the British had reorganized the region into major administrative blocks. The first was Lagos Colony, the second was the Protectorate of Southern Nigeria, the third was the Protectorate of Northern Nigeria. In 1900, Britain created the Protectorates of Northern and Southern Nigeria. The Southern Nigeria Protectorate was formed from the Niger Coast Protectorate and territories linked to the Royal Niger Company below Lokoja. Lagos, which had been annexed earlier, remained important. In 1906, Lagos Colony was merged with Southern Nigeria, creating the Colony and Protectorate of Southern Nigeria. So, just before 1914, the main British-controlled territories were Northern Nigeria Protectorate, Colony and Protectorate of Southern Nigeria, and Lagos as the southern administrative center within that structure. This is the direct colonial answer to the question. Before the amalgamation, Nigeria was mainly two large British territories, Northern Nigeria and Southern Nigeria, with Lagos already absorbed into the southern administration. The Northern Nigeria Protectorate was vast. It covered much of what is today northern Nigeria and parts of the Middle Belt. But British control did not appear overnight. It came through treaties, military campaigns, political pressure, and the defeat or submission of local authorities. The British often used indirect rule in the north. Instead of removing every traditional ruler, they governed through emirs and existing authority structures where possible. This system allowed the British to rule a large territory with relatively few officials, but it also changed the nature of local power. Traditional rulers now had to operate within a colonial chain of command. Their authority was preserved in some ways, but redirected toward British interests, especially taxation, labor control, law and order, and administration. The North was large, but it was expensive to administer. This financial issue later became one of the reasons the British considered amalgamation. Southern Nigeria was different. It had the coast, ports, customs revenue, export trade, missionary activity, schools, and a growing class of educated Africans, especially in Lagos and other southern centers. The southern economy generated more revenue for the colonial government. Trade through the coast made the South financially attractive. The southern Nigeria Protectorate included many different societies, from Yoruba towns in the west to Igbo communities in the east and Niger Delta trading states along the coast. But governing the south was not simple. In some places, the British could deal with kings and chiefs. In other places, political power was more decentralized. In many communities, people resisted colonial taxation, forced labor, warrant chiefs, and foreign authority. Still, by 1914, the British had already built administrative systems, courts, trade networks, ports, and infrastructure that tied the South more closely to colonial economic interests. Lagos deserves special attention because it was not just another settlement. By the late 19th and early 20th century, Lagos was a major colonial city. It had newspapers, lawyers, merchants, missionaries, schools, churches, mosques, returnee communities, and political voices that challenged colonial policy. Lagos was annexed by Britain in 1861 and became a colony in 1862. It later became part of southern Nigeria in 1906. This meant Lagos had already experienced British colonial rule for more than 50 years before the amalgamation of 1914. It was also the place where colonial administration, commerce, and African political consciousness came together. When Nigeria was amalgamated, Lagos became the capital and seat of the central administration. The official reason for amalgamation was administrative efficiency. But behind that was money. Southern Nigeria had stronger revenue because of customs, ports, and export trade. Northern Nigeria was larger and more expensive to govern, and it often ran at a deficit. Many historians argue that one major reason for amalgamation was to use southern revenue to support the cost of northern administration. This does not mean economics was the only factor. There were also railways, military organization, postal services, customs, legal systems, and administrative convenience. The British wanted a more efficient colonial machine. One territory, one governor-general, one central administration, one colonial economy. But this was not a democratic union negotiated by the peoples of the territory. It was a colonial decision made for colonial convenience. The man most associated with the 1914 amalgamation is Sir Frederick Lugard. Lugard had experience in colonial administration and military campaigns. He became governor of both northern and southern Nigeria in 1912 and oversaw the process that joined them together. On January 1st, 1914, the Colony and Protectorate of Nigeria was formed, with Lugard as the first Governor-General. But Lugard did not create the people of Nigeria. He created a colonial administrative structure. That difference is important. The people already existed. The cultures already existed. The histories already existed. The trade routes already existed. The kingdoms and communities already existed. What changed in 1914 was that Britain placed these territories under one colonial government. So, what was Nigeria before the amalgamation of 1914? It was many things at once. Culturally, it was a land of many peoples, languages, religions, and political traditions. Historically, it was home to kingdoms, emirates, city-states, village republics, trading ports, and spiritual centers. Economically, it was tied together by trade in agricultural produce, textiles, salt, leather, livestock, palm oil, cola nuts, and river commerce. Politically, by the early 1900s, it had become a set of British-controlled territories. Administratively, just before 1914, it was mainly divided into northern Nigeria and southern Nigeria, with Lagos already merged into the southern structure. So the simplest answer is this. Before 1914, Nigeria was not yet one country. It was a group of different societies and British colonial territories that were later joined together for administrative and economic reasons. It would be wrong to say the peoples of the region had no contact before 1914. They did. There was trade between North and South, there were religious movements, there were wars and alliances, there were migration routes, there were shared markets, there were intermarriages, there were cultural exchanges, but contact is not the same as one national identity. The people did not generally see themselves as Nigerians before colonial rule. They identified with their towns, kingdoms, clans, emirates, religions, languages, professions, and communities. The British colonial project forced a single political identity onto a region of deep diversity. Over time, that identity became real in different ways, but in 1914 it was still very much a colonial arrangement. The amalgamation solved a British administrative problem, but it did not solve the deeper question of nationhood. How do you build one country out of hundreds of ethnic groups? How do you combine different legal systems, economies, religious traditions, political structures, and historical memories? The British answer was not true integration. They created a central administration, but many parts of the country continued to be governed differently. Indirect rule worked differently in the north, west, east, and coastal areas. The colonial government joined the territory, but did not fully unite the people. This is one reason the legacy of 1914 remains controversial. Some see it as the beginning of modern Nigeria. Others see it as the root of many political problems. But either way, it was a turning point. After the amalgamation, northern and southern Nigeria were now under one governor general. Certain services became more centralized: military, treasury, audit, posts and telegraphs, railways, survey, medical services, judicial and legal departments. Lagos became the seat of the central government. The name Nigeria now referred to a single colonial territory. But the new Nigeria was still deeply uneven. The north and south had different administrative systems. Education developed differently. Missionary activity was stronger in parts of the south. Islamic institutions remained powerful in the north. The colonial economy still served British interests. So, after 1914, Nigeria existed on paper as one colonial unit, but the work of becoming one nation was only beginning. When we talk about amalgamation, it is easy to focus only on maps and British officials, but the real story is about people: the farmer in the Middle Belt, the trader in Kano, the fisherman in the Niger Delta, the market woman in Lagos, the scholar in Borno, the chief in Benin, the elder in an Igbo village, the craftsman in Oyo, the herder crossing the savannah, the canoe man on the Niger. These were the people whose lives were reorganized by colonial borders. They did not wake up in 1914 and suddenly become the same people, but they were now placed inside the same political container. That container was called Nigeria. So what was Nigeria before the amalgamation of 1914? It was not one country. It was a vast region of old civilizations, kingdoms, emirates, communities, trade networks, and colonial territories. By the time Britain joined the North and South in 1914, the land had already passed through centuries of history. The amalgamation did not create the people, it created the colonial state, and that colonial state later became the country we now call Nigeria. To understand Nigeria today, we must understand this beginning. Not because history gives us all the answers, but because it helps us ask better questions. Who were we before the map? What did colonialism join together? What did it divide? And what does it really mean to build one nation out of many histories? That is the story before 1914. And it is also the beginning of the Nigerian question. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to Nigerian Encyclopedia for more deep stories about the people, places, and events that shaped Nigeria. In the next episode, we'll look at the man behind the amalgamation, Lord Lugard, his policies, his motives, and the legacy he left behind.